Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel where today we are doing a full-length, non-spoilery review of Unity by Elly Bangs. So, Unity is an adult science fiction standalone, and in it we are following our main character of Danae. Danae is one member of a collective consciousness, but right now in this particular body is kind of cut off from the rest of the consciousness. She is currently living in a city that is built in the ocean, like it's literally underwater, and she decides that she wants to leave this underwater city and go through California, through the Southwest to a very particular destination. And to that end, she hires a mercenary by the name of Alexi to help get her there. And the story goes from there. Now, I should say that there are multiple content warnings, but the one that I definitely noticed was suicidal thoughts. So let's jump into the world building. Now, this is set at least a couple of hundred years in the future, and we have like climate change disaster and nuclear disaster and a massive pandemic. And so, just like this is super post apocalyptic, right? It's very interesting because, like, it is very post-apocalyptic, but it's different than the ones that I have read up until this point, especially as it incorporates climate change into the like list of disasters. I thought that the author, their writing of this setting was very evocative while not spending a ton of time describing everything. I think that the author just did a really great job with this setting and knowing that like all of this disaster stuff kind of happened. Additionally, like the history and the geopolitical kind of stuff, the little bits that we got were fascinating, and I kind of really wanted more, even though like we really didn't need any more for this particular story. But I did find it very interesting. The one thing I had issues with the world building is Danae and her collective consciousness and how that kind of came to be. How it was explained. It felt like it really wanted to be hard science with hard science kind of explanations. But then when we got those explanations, they weren't really sciency. I didn't find, and so it was like trying to be hard science but didn't really work, like it didn't really quite know what it wanted to do. I mean, you can do hard science or you can do kind of hand wavy, but trying to do the hand wavy stuff similar to hard science doesn't generally work out very well, and I think that in this instance it didn't work. Now I'm used to suspending disbelief, so this didn't really bother me. I was just like, it doesn't make sense and it's okay. And I just kind of moved on, but I did find it a little strange how it was presented. But overall, in general, I thought the world building was really well done. So let's move on to the characters. And obviously, Danae is our main character, and I'll admit, I did not like her at first. I just could not quite get next to her. But as the story went on and we find out more about her background, I just found her more and more interesting. She made much more sense. I found her interesting. And by the end, I was definitely rooting for her. I found her interesting and I really liked her as a character. Alexi is a mercenary, and I honestly just liked him immediately. Like, I just found him to be very practical, very like, this is what we've got to do. And so I just really liked that, especially as he was dealing with Danae and Danae's boyfriend Naoto as they're trying to get out. Like, they're a lot less practical, and so as he's trying to kind of like, herd these two people through, I just found it very interesting. He's definitely got his own issues, which I found very believable and also interesting to watch. I also liked his friendship with Kat, who is somebody who he calls but doesn't he talks to her a lot, but doesn't has only met her like once, but it's like his closest friend. I don't know, but I really liked their relationship and their banter as well. I will say Naoto, which is Danae's boyfriend, I didn't actually like as a character, and I can only think of one real purpose for him being in the story, and it's not great. I just found him to be clingy and whiny, and I didn't really care about what happened to him in like at any point in this story. So yeah, like I kind of know why he was included, but also I wish we had found another way, honestly. Like he wasn't super annoying, it's just it was an irritant a little bit. And then our antagonist, honestly, like we do dive into the antagonist's motivations for what they're doing. We have flashbacks and everything. And honestly, even though I understood the motivations, it didn't really explain his intensity of what he's feeling. So that was the thing that I really struggled with is that, like, I'm like, I get it. I understand why you're doing this, sort of. But like how you're choosing to go about it and the intensity with which you're going about it does not make sense to me. So I do think that a little bit was lost because it didn't really raise the tension when he was doing what he was doing, because like it didn't seem to follow from his motivations. So I think that a little bit of extra work could have made this particular character shine. However, as it was, it just didn't quite work. I will say that Danae and Alexei and their story more than make up for it. So I wasn't terribly bothered by it, but I did notice that. So let's talk about the plot. So the plot is a very straightforward journey plot, but along the way, we are diving into the backstory of Danae, of Alexei, of the borrower, and we're finding out all these pieces of their past and putting their place in the world in context and everything as we go along this journey. And it's just done in a very, very fascinating kind of way. So you just get more layers of this story as you go along. Now, I will say that there is a very large flashback section, like more than halfway into this book, that I think was a little bit too long. We did get new information, but some of the information was also just confirmation of what we already knew. And because the flashback section was like 40 pages or something, 40 or 50 pages out of a book that was less than 300, that's extensive. And especially for it not all being necessary, I'm just, I don't know. I would have liked it if it were a little bit shorter because it did kind of drag the story down a little bit in terms of pacing. I was a little bit bored in the sections where I was like, yeah, I already know this, right? But overall, with that section, I do think we got fascinating information. I think it just needed to be edited a little bit more. I will say also that we have Danae as part of a collective consciousness, which always brings up certain questions, certain morals, themes, those kinds of things. And I will say that things happened exactly as I expected them to, as well as I don't think it was adding anything particularly new to this conversation about collective consciousness. And so I understand why it was important to the story, but it just wasn't quite, there was potential there that just wasn't fulfilled. And honestly, the ending was a hair boring, mostly because everything was following very logically, and because it was, I was able to predict what was going to happen in the ending, which honestly you want. Like, I would rather have an ending that makes sense, that is a little bit boring, than an ending that doesn't make any sense and I can't guess it because it doesn't make any sense, right? But I will say it was just a little bit boring. So unfortunately, that did slow it down a little bit for me as well. Overall, though, I do think that the plot was genuinely well done. And considering the fact that this is a debut novel, like the issues that I'm pointing out with the plot are things that I wouldn't necessarily expect a debut author to get exactly right the first time out. So honestly, with this plot, I am very happy overall. So getting into style, structure, and pacing, I will say that the pacing is medium to slow. So occasionally it was slow, mostly it was kind of medium slow. And it was, for me personally, also, again, it slowed down a little bit when I knew what to expect. It was just like, okay, let's just get through this. Um, but overall, medium to slow. There, the other thing to note is there aren't any real chapters. So there's large sections in, it's broken up into like 4 or 5 sections throughout the book, and then we just shift perspectives, and it is offset, and like each perspective shift is labeled kind of like a chapter, but it's not really chapters. So just be aware of that going in. It was a little strange to me at first, but I quickly got with the program, and it was fine. But it definitely took a little bit of getting used to. I will say, however, each perspective is very different from each other. They're very distinct. There are, I think, 4 perspectives overall, and I could flip through the book and not know whose perspective I'm in, read a little bit, and know exactly who it's supposed to be because it's just that distinct. So I think that was exceptionally well done. But yeah, overall, I just genuinely liked this book. I thought it was a very solid outing, especially as a debut novelist. And I will happily check out anything else that this particular author decides to write. So overall, I ended up giving this book 4.25 stars. So let me know down below if you have any thoughts about this particular book. But that is all I have. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!